So what we've been doing so far is just some very simple additions to the game for this project. So things like the checkpoint activated, the fallen blocks, returning the fallen platforms. So what we kind of want to do now is expand on the game itself so that we have like a game over, an end game situation. And to do that, we can use something like lives. So we can have lives that we have a finite number of lives, let's say 3, and after we die 3 times, our game ends, or in this case, we just reset the level. Because at the minute, when we die, we're just respawning back to our last checkpoint. But what we want to do is want to essentially kill ourselves so that the level reloads. Now, in reality, if you want to flesh out your project, you'd actually make a main menu, so you just return back to the main menu. But that kind of goes beyond the scope of this project. It's more of something we're looking at the next project. But for this project, we just wanted to reset the level. Okay, so here's how we're going to do it. We know that in order to display something on screen, we need a UI text element. So that's what we're going to do. And instead of making a new one, we're just going to grab the timer text and we're going to duplicate that. So Control D to duplicate. Hit F2 to rename it, and I'm going to call it live text. And then I'm just going to change this to lives. And I'm also going to move it down to here. Okay, so we have our timer text and our lives text. Now you'll notice that timer text has nothing in it, just other than new text, but when we start the game, it starts counting up. We'll do the same thing with the lives, where I could literally leave this blank. In fact, let's do that. But I'm actually going to use the code to change what that text says. And we'll check that in a second. But what's going to happen now is we need to figure out how we can hold our lives and how we can display our lives. So to display the lives, it's very simple. We just make reference to the text, and then we set the text to our number of lives. But how do we know what number of lives we have? Well, we need to look at holding it in a variable. Now there's 2 types of variables that handle numbers: floats and integers. Now a float is basically a number with a decimal point, so like 1.2 or 1.3 or 1.4. Integers or ints are whole numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you're not going to have 1.2 lives or 1.5 lives, you're going to have 1 life, 2 life or 3 life. So the variable type we need is an integer or an int. So let's do that. Let's go into our code and let's make a reference to our text object. So serialize field private text, and it's live text. So reference to the live text. But now we also need another variable, which is an integer, which is going to hold the number of lives. So int, we'll call it player lives, and we're going to default it to 3. So when the game starts, we'll start with 3 lives. So our next task is to actually change the lives in our game display to a number of lives. Okay, so to do this, we go to our start function and we actually change the output of the text to the number of lives we've got. And it's very simple. We just say lives text dot text. So we're getting the text value of the lives text, and it's equal to a string. So you need to use quotation marks. So we'll just say lives space and the quotation marks plus player lives. Now we do a space here because otherwise, if we leave it like that, it's going to literally write like this. But with a space, it writes like that. It just looks neater if we leave the space. That's why we got the space in. So if we now go to our game, where are you? Here. Go to our player capsule, and let's come back to our player respawn script. Remember, all this is happening inside the player respawn script. We take our live text and we drag it in here. Hit play. And now our lives are also on here. Now let's go kill ourselves. Our lives on updating. So how do we know what number of lives we've got? Well, we stored it in the variable here, play lives. And when we're jumping off, nothing's happening. That value isn't changing. It never changes because we're not telling it to change. We need to actually tell it to change. So if we come to our function which handles how we actually die, which is this function here, we need to tell it every time we die, take away 1 life. And it's a very simple line of code. And it's play lives minus minus. So players lives minus minus. All that is doing is saying take 1 life away from our player lives variable. It's the same as writing it out as player lives minus equals 1. In that case, you're still taking 1 point away. In this case, sorry, 1 life. In this case, you also still take 1 life away. So this is taking a life away from the player upon death. Good. So let's go kill ourselves. And we're still not updated. But why? Why aren't our lives text updated? Now, are we, every time we die, is our lives getting taken away? Well, we can check that just by using simple debug log. So debug log lives plus the number of lives we've got. Let's just check that. Let's go to our game, open the console, hit play. Well, look, if we look in our console, our lives are updating. Here. So why aren't they updating on screen? Well, if you remember in the start function, we actually had to set the text up. So let's copy that. Because all we're doing is we're literally doing the exact same line of code here. It's the same line of code. All we're doing is when we take away a life, we just need to update the text. So hit Control S to save, come back to the game view, and watch. Now our lives are updated. Amazing, good. It works. So we can all go home now. Or can we? No, because nothing's happening. Even though we're losing lives, nothing's happening. We can just lose an infinite number of lives. All we're doing at the minute is just counting down. We can go on forever. Nothing's going to happen because we're not telling the game what to happen. So what do we want to happen? So essentially all we want to do is when we die, or when our lives reaches 0, restart the level. So how do we do that? So if our lives reaches 0, restart the level. Well, it's simple. It's an if statement. So if player lives, and even Visual Studio knows what we're doing here. But if player lives equals 0, then scene manager dot load scene 0. And this simple line of code here will reset our level. So let's watch it in action. And then we restart the level. We know we have because now we're back at the start point and not the checkpoint anymore. So that works. Great. And that all there is to this little challenge. It's something very, very simple. What I would like you to do is go off and research how you would make a main menu. Because when it comes to your next project, that is what we can look into. We can look at expanding this even further and making a main menu so that when the player dies, they are to return back to the main menu and then they can start the game again from that menu. But again, for this project, it goes kind of beyond the scope. But I hope you've had a go at this yourself, and then you can watch this video just to learn how to actually do it. Thank you.